Welcome to another edition of TSSA Safety Matters. I'm your host, Greg Kerr from Stakeholder Relations, and today we're with Roland Hadaller, TSSA's Director of Elevating Devices, for a few thoughts on important matters within the industry and TSA's role in public safety. So thanks for being with us today, Roland.
Well, Greg, thanks for the invite. I look forward to some of these new methods of communication. So, let's get on with it.
Excellent. So as I understand, too, you'll have a quarterly message on a regular basis for contractors, mechanics, and owners as well.
Absolutely. Right? That's the plan. Getting the message out to owners is always very difficult, so it's great when we have new ways to get that message out, and easy ways, too.
Indeed. Now, we've heard a little from some contractors and mechanics that one of the things they're really interested in are top non-compliances. So could you highlight what a few of those are?
Certainly, I can give you a few examples, and one of the things that we find when we do our periodic inspections is quite often the annual tests aren't done, quite often the monthly maintenance is not done. Other things we find typically is the means of communication, so the telephone, the intercom, the alarm bell is not working in the car, and that's pretty critical because we just had the ice storm, we had the power outage, we had all these elevators shut down, and it's really important that the communication works so you know if somebody's trapped in the elevator, you can get them out.
Mm-hmm. And for those emergency situations that occur. Now, as I understand that there's been some recent developments, harmonization of codes with the American Society of Mechanical Engineers and the Canadian Standards Association. Some of those common non-compliances, I think, were addressed in that. What were the top sort of highlights of that development?
So, Greg, let me fill you in a little bit about the whole harmonization effort. This has been ongoing for about 15 years, so it's really been a long project and an awful lot of work gone into it. CSA from the Canadian side, ASME from the U.S. side. And finally, in 2004, we printed one code book that was good for Canada and the U.S. We had a few areas that still needed to be harmonized because in that code book, it said if you're in Canada, this is the rule. If you're in the U.S., this is the rule. And one of those last things was the maintenance. So the Americans had developed something they called a maintenance control program. Mm-hmm. And the maintenance control program was a list of all the things that you had to do to make sure the elevator was safe as part of your maintenance. And this is something that finally got harmonized. It was printed in the 2010 code. We're about to get the 13 code, so there were some enhancements made there as well. So when we adopted the 2010 code, we said, let's adopt some of these 13 enhancements as well. And along with that came the maintenance control program. Mm-hmm. And this is a huge thing for industry. It's something that owners need to be made aware of because now there are more things that the contractor has to do. So it's probably going to be more expensive, but it's going to lead to much better maintenance and a higher level of safety.
Mm-hmm. And this is a unique thing in itself of where the Canadian Elevator Contractors Association is creating a model. Is that correct?
That's correct. So what happened, because we knew this would be a very big job, we've been talking to industry about it, and it's great to see industry step up to the plate. The Seeker Group, the Canadian elevator contractors, said, okay, let's put something together. TSSA, we want you to be involved because we want your input on if the final product is going to meet the requirement of the code. So they spent an awful lot of work on this. There were several meetings of the task group, and the result was a shell was put together. And TSSA adopted the code. We put requirements in for when the maintenance control program would come into effect. And that happened in 2012, in May 1st, 2012, for new elevators. Mm-hmm. And the plan was that shortly thereafter it would also be applicable for existing elevators. But when we realized the scope of what had to be done and 50,000 elevators getting these new logbooks and maintenance control programs into all these machine rooms, we realized it was too big a job to happen at the same time, so we extended it to January 1st, but then we had the elevator strike.
Yeah.
So again, we extended it a little longer. It's going to happen now in April. Mm-hmm. So all existing elevators have to have this in place in April. So this is a good opportunity for us to at least let owners know, hey, there's something new coming. Work with your maintenance contractor. Make sure the MCP is in place.
And it's good too that the contractors are the ones that are developing this, so that they have their own input and they work with the owners in terms of adopting that.
Yes, and you're absolutely right, because if we say, this is the rule, we're enforcing it, this is the date, and then if shortly before that time, all the contractors start working on it, it's just utter chaos. So by working on it a year ahead of time, for them to really be thinking it through and saying, how do I execute, how do I get it out there, that's made this thing very successful. And I do have to also give some thanks to all the work that Mark Tevier did, because he really worked at from the code side, and then he worked at the interaction and with the contractors to make sure that they were on board and that they were getting this in place.
And from my understanding, that with this harmonization, it also makes us quicker to market. So when something comes out, we can really apply better safety decisions at a faster rate. Absolutely,
and what we see with all code development is the world is getting very small. We've got a harmonized North American code, and there's then one other major code, that's EN 81. That's the European code, and it's used Europe and Asia. Our code is used in North America, but South America, they sometimes take the North American code or they take the European code. So really the next step is, how do we harmonize to a worldwide code? And I won't see it in my time probably, but sooner or later it's going to be here, because manufacturing is done worldwide and products are designed for world consumption. So that's the wave of the future.
Well, and one of the waves that you've accomplished, which I think is unique, you recently had your industry town hall. This is a new thing that you've been working on with, again, contractors and with mechanics. What's the reception been like, and what things have developed out of this sort of town hall?
Yeah, so we've had a few of these, and we can see over time as they evolve, communications getting better, people throwing things on the table and saying, these are issues we need to deal with. That's gotten much better, and the turnout was excellent. We had a lot of mechanics, so we had the contractors, but a lot of mechanics there, the people that interact with our inspectors, so it's very important. And you know, several issues. One of the issues, the industry is extremely busy right now. You just look at all the cranes in the GTA area, so you can understand things are busy, and there's a limited number of engineers out there to do the submissions. There's more work than everybody can do, and then at the TSSA end, we've got a limited number of engineers too to review the designs. We have some issues with the codes, so we try to work with the contractors and not let them hold the jobs up, but we also have a huge backlog of design reviews, and when industry is so busy, they're getting things done at the last minute, they need it right away. So this was an issue that was brought up, and you know, how can we get more people on board at TSSA to be able to turn these things around? What other things can we do to turn them around? So that was an excellent discussion. Some other things we talked about, incident reporting, which is always very important to us. We want to know, are things happening out there? We need to know about it. We need to know where the safety risks are. So all in all, it was an excellent dialogue, and I thought it went really well.
So where does it stand in terms of ramping up staff to address that issue?
So right now we have 3 positions that we need to fill in the elevating device engineering department, and we're actively recruiting. And the good thing about an engineer is you bring them on, and in a couple of months they're up to speed. So it's not the long training process we have with the inspectors, but we're working with HR, so we hope to have some new people on board in the next month or so.
So it really helps you keep your ear to the ground. You're involving yourself more and more. One development that actually didn't come out of the town hall, but TSSA's AGM last year, was the representation of union members with the advisory council. What was the process with that, and what's the reception been like?
Yeah, so that was very interesting, because I really didn't think too much about our council matrix. However, it's really something that has to be reviewed on a regular basis, and make sure that the people that are coming to us advice are everybody out there that's involved in the safety system. And let's face it, you know, our inspectors are important, but we only have a few of them, and it's those 3,000 plus maintenance mechanics out there that really make the difference. They're the ones that make the elevator safe, so why wouldn't we have input from them at the council level? So that you're right, this came up at the AGM. We reviewed it, and we've actually reviewed the matrices for all the councils, and on the ED one we said absolutely we should have representation. So at the last council meeting we agreed on the new matrix, and at the council meeting coming up in February we'll have a representative from the mechanic sector. So we're looking forward to some good dialogue and input from them.
Excellent. It's nice when things evolve sort of naturally like that, and then we bring more people to the table.
Yeah, and it's great when our stakeholders bring something to the table, and there is a good way to accommodate them that meets their requirements and helps us do our job better.
And helps with communication and also this sort of shared sense of responsibility, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, another part of the evolution, the elevating device program is becoming increasingly risk-informed, and you've recently talked about two important safety risks, one on elevator overspeed and one on aging devices, specifically emergency brakes and leveling issues. Can you talk a little bit about that, but what we're doing in order to alleviate some of the impacts on, I guess, tenants and owners and the costs of retrofitting?
Yeah, so basically at all the councils, ED, AD, SKI, one of the priority safety issues that our stakeholders talk about is aging equipment. And the elevator code really doesn't deal with what happens when equipment gets old, and it was installed to a code that's 20 years ago, and the codes have really evolved. So it's something that we've been aware of it, and the issue of failures of single bulkhead cylinders on hydraulic elevators is something that has been on our radar, and we've been working to a solution. So with the adoption of the new code, that's been taken care of. But the other thing that industry came to us, they said emergency brakes on elevators is a very critical thing. We formed a task force. We looked at it. We looked at the risk level. Of course, we used data that our risk department provided for us, and the risk levels don't show that this is a huge issue. But what other issue came up was leveling issues on single-speed elevators, and we know maybe 1,000 of these devices out there, and where are they? Well, they're in seniors' homes or the places where you really need good leveling. Mm-hmm. So we looked at the risk there, and the risk was actually high enough that we said, yeah, we need to do something about that. But as you pointed out, it costs money to modernize an elevator. So how do we get this done? How do we engage the owners? How do we make sure that this is not cost prohibitive? So what we've done is we're in the process of putting together a draft director's order that will specify what the requirements are, and it's really aimed at leveling. So it doesn't mean that you have to replace your whole elevator control. If you can put a solid-state drive on it and get the leveling requirements, that might be a more economical way and still get the end result that we want. And of course the other part is we need to stage this. So if we've got 1,000 devices to do, if we say we'll do the first 500 in 3 years, then it gives those owners of those devices 3 years to put the plan in place, get the budget in place, get the order out, and get the work started. And then the next 500 or the next 250, however we stage them, that could be a year later. Mm-hmm. So we realize that industry only has certain capacity. This is an expensive thing. So we have to work with the owners and make sure that we get a solution that everybody can live with.
And haven't you been working with contractors too to get that data for single speed?
Yeah, and as you know, data is extremely important. We really need to keep working on what the install base is out there. And we've got data that goes back to paper records at MCCR before TSSA existed. Mm-hmm. And how much of those paper records ended up getting in the system and getting in our database, that's an issue. So we really didn't know where all the single-speed elevators were. So as part of the last round of contractor registration, we said, when you tell us what devices you maintain, you need to tell us what the drive system is as well, so we can identify not only the single speeds, but all the drives out there.
So I also understand that you with the new code developments that have been happening, there's going to be a broad communication. You've posted those on TSSA.org and it's gone out on email. You'll be sending it out to owners in a couple of weeks.
That's correct. So at the last council meeting, this was something that came up, that all these things are happening and owners may not be aware of it. So we worked with in TSSA and also sent it out to our council colleagues and got some good feedback, revised it, and in fact just this week it was posted to the website, and within the next couple of weeks we're going to get a mail out to owners because everybody's not registered with us, so we have to do the mail out as well. Excellent.
Well, in all the ways that we can communicate, right? So, well, thanks, Roland. Appreciate you being with us. Stay tuned for more TSSA Matters. We'll soon have a video posted on some of the recent developments between TSSA and the Ontario College of Trades regarding elevator mechanic certification. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Greg.